Hello, everyone. Welcome to another lecture on deviant subcultures. I am Dr. Dilsora Fozilova. We're going to talk about youth subcultures and their transition to adulthood today. As we developed already, that subcultures are groups that deviate from mainstream society's values, norms, and belief systems, and often forming around the music, fashion, and lifestyle choices. Youth, in particular, are drawn to subcultures to as a way to express their identities, resist societal expectations, and find a sense of belonging in society. Sometimes because they couldn't access this sense of belonging or couldn't find that sense of belonging in society, they're driven towards the like-minded, similar people to feel that, to have that sense of belonging. In this lecture, we will examine how and why youth subcultures emerge, focusing on social, economic, cultural conditions that give rise to them. We will also explore Ross Heinfler's two chapters. One of them is about youth subcultures, how they emerge, and the next one is about what changes when they transition to adulthood, and we will talk about that and his key insights into what happens to the subcultures and when they transfer to adulthood. So the question is going to be that do they leave the subcultures behind as they grow older, or do the values and identities shaped by these groups persist into their adult lives as well? As we go through this topic, think critically about the role of subcultures in shaping individual or group identity and broader social trends, and consider how subcultures navigate mainstream society as they mature. Now, allow me to share my PowerPoint with you, and then we can discuss the points that Ross Heinfler makes in his chapters. So in this first part of the lecture, I am going to talk about youth subcultures. The first part is about the youth subcultures, how does youth subcultures emerge, and the second short video I will be discussing their transition to adulthood. And both of them are the chapters by Ross Heinfler, and let's see what he says about youth subcultures. So the author argues that subcultures often emerge as a response to dominant cultures. I shared a lecture on power elite. So I did it with purpose of shape your understanding of how decision making processes happen in society. So now you need to think about that decision making processes and whose interests are represented in the decision making processes, and how some layers of society feels left outside of that interest or left outside when the decisions made about society's interests or about societies. Subcultures often emerge as a response to the decisions made by these dominant groups, dominant cultures, norms, and values. Individuals or groups feel marginalized, alienated, or dissatisfied with mainstream society, leading them to create alternative communities. For example, if in the society only people who access to education are higher middle class or the higher class people, the wealthy people's children. And when we talk about accessing education, we're talking about if the schools close by, if there possibility to for the students to get there. Also, if they are when they are in the school, there can be discrimination in schools. Like we're talking about all different kinds of societies. And then when they finish school, they have opportunities for higher education is if they can pay for a higher education. In our world today, for example, studying at the university is a privilege because not everybody can pay the tuition fees or study in certain universities. So the higher the university standards or more prestigious universities, more expensive than, for example, community colleges. So depending on that, some groups may feel that they don't have the opportunity to pursue higher education, or they don't have the opportunity to buy this beautiful home or car or whatever it is out there. Or maybe they are feeling that they can't even afford to rent the apartment or look after their families. Maybe there is somebody ill in the family. They don't have the ability to afford their medical bills. And all these kind of situations can make people to feel marginalized, alienated, and dissatisfied with mainstream society. If the interests of all these groups were the interests, similar interests represented in the decision making, there should be some sort of governmental help or some sort of support from the society and government. So these people should have the opportunity to participate in these processes, like studying at the university or affording medical bills or affording the apartment or food or anything like that. So this dissatisfaction sometimes can lead people to look for alternative community or communities, or sometimes for informal marginalization, like racial discrimination or discriminating certain immigrant groups, discriminating certain ethnic groups can push them to the margins of society. And then what they do is they will find people just like themselves and form their own identity, place of belonging, sense of belonging, to overcome these feelings of dissatisfaction. These subcultures provide an outlet for expressing resistance or rebellion against social norms, often seen in music, fashion, language, and behavior. So shared identity is one of the important elements in subgroups. Sometimes, often, and the usually is the better word, usually the subcultures unite through these shared identities. I have this problem, you have the similar problem. I'm not getting along with this mainstream society. I am not agree with the norms and laws and regulations of this mainstream society. Therefore, I am your friend. So the people who are not um, getting along with mainstream society, not fitting well, not accessing the resources available for other people, they can find some like-minded people, similar people, and then they can form their own subculture that provides them identity. They probably not favored in mainstream society, now they favor one another. Maybe there are other people not agree with their ideas. Now they have people who agree with them and then empowers them and then provides them support in these subgroups. In some way, subgroups are for those people, just uniting those people, giving them sense of identity, sense of belonging, and also um, sense of unity, sense of solidarity with their like-minded people. So they're accepting one another, having similar belief systems. Participants usually find a space where their values, beliefs, and lifestyles are accepted. They form strong bonds with one another. They form strong support systems. They're always there for one another. And often the group identity becomes so crystallized, though all the members of this group, even though before they didn't do certain things, for example, in this picture, you can see all of them having similar kind of mohawk on their heads. Maybe they shared some identity, maybe they didn't look the same, maybe they didn't do the things same, but being in the subgroup, they start to do things similar to other people. The collective identity of the subculture helps individuals establish a sense of self in contrast with the dominant culture's expectations. Now, they're not only having this shared identity, but they're making sure the contrast between them and the mainstream society is clear. Their identity is different than them. They're showing that they have this unified group of people that do not accept that norms. They look down to those norms, or they think that's horrible things. Now they're showing that they're sure about that. They are empowered by their group, and they are showing the very clear boundaries between the mainstream society and their subgroup. And also about the cultural capital. What is cultural capital? When we understand culture, culture is everything but the nature, like things we take from nature and add our work and make something that will become culture. For example, iron as a raw material is part of nature. When we take them and make cups, let's say jewelry or tools, that will become a culture. Now, cultural capital is having these skills to do those things, having this looks, the clothing. It can be, for example, certain way of we are doing our hairdo. It can be expressing ourselves through music, through clothing, through songs, and all of those our non-material culture, music and belief systems, and all of them are our non-material culture. Now, creating their own cultural capital means they have this culture now that's shared with the whole group. That's their cultural capital. People participate in subcultures to gain this cultural capital. You can go and join this group, and you can wear similar clothes, and you can do same hairdos. You can have certain look, certain jewelry, certain belief systems, certain songs, certain music, certain dance. Anything represents that culture. That is their cultural capital. That distinguishes themselves from mainstream society and other groups. Subcultures often have unique symbols, fashion, and language that members use to mark their identity. When we look at the cultures, they advance over the hundreds of years, and they have their own language. they build language as they come up with new things. For example, if they come up with a cup, they call this a cup, and then it's a white cup. And this in their language that it means something, and everybody knows what this is. So for them, coming up with own way of saying things or terminology or the way of looking, that is their cultural capital, and they're distinguishing themselves from the mainstream society's cultural capital. These symbols create sense of exclusivity and distinction, allowing participants to stand out and express individuality within a collective identity. For example, Gothic subcultures, they have all this specific way of fashion, dark colors, dark makeup, for example. All of them are part of their cultural capital. And other ones, it can be around music. They have certain sort of, for example, rock music, the way they doing things or how they represent themselves through this music. That is their cultural capital. Then one of the important things to know about this idea of cultural capital is that is unique in a way. It differentiates itself from the rest of the world, from other subcultures in the mainstream culture. So that is the cultural capital of the specific subculture. In the Power Elite lecture, we talked about decision-making processes being concentrated in this small group of people, highly concentrated in this small group of people, and subcultures emerge because they are oppressed or not happy from this decision-making processes. Now, subcultures emerge as a resistance to these decisions or norms created in society or laws created in society or politics. They can be something that, forming against the political decisions. Some subcultures emerge as a political or social resistance movements challenging existing power structures. This can include questioning capitalist norms, gender norms, racial identities. It can be challenging the government structures. It can be challenging laws, and it can be challenging specific laws they are not happy about. In my own research, I have researched extremist groups in Muslim societies, and these extremist groups form as a resistance or as a response to some of the religious laws created by the secular government. They're challenging the secular government's decision-making processes about Islam. So other subcultures, just like those groups, form certain resistance and challenge the laws and norms created by the dominant culture. Participants often feel empowered by collective resisting or subverting societal norms, whether through direct activism or symbolic acts of deviance. So even it can be rap music, and then the wording of it challenges the structure, questions the structure. Then the support from their own group is very strong, and also they can find the support from the mainstream society. It can be attractive to those who are having problems with the similar kind of decisions made by the government. So by expressing themselves, their resistance or dissatisfaction from the political elite, they can attract some people and get stronger or become more widespread identity. They can form widespread identity. Influence of mass media and influence of mass media is huge. Mass media plays a dual role in both promoting and co-opting subcultures. Media can help share the influence of subcultures by giving them visibility, but it can also lead to commercialization, diluting the original values of the group. So there's like so many different ways the media can have effect on these subcultures if they give them voice, if they represent them right. They can give them some power between people. People can start to understand what's going on in this group, start to understand that what they are resisting, what they are unhappy about, what they are dissatisfied, where their dissatisfaction is coming from. That's one way of putting that. The next way is also they can commercialize their look, their brand or their identity, and then they can represent them wrong sometimes. They can harm these groups. They can make them visible to certain the political groups, that they can be taken for questioning. It depends where they are and what they are representing or what are their purposes. It can have all different kinds of outcomes through media. As subcultures gain popularity, aspects of them may be commodified by mainstream society, potentially losing their rebellious age. So that is another thing. Like when they become popular, and then their identity and then their cultural capital is being commodified by mainstream society, then that means like mainstream society is accepting those, accepting the way this deviant subculture is. Deviant meant that they were deviating from the norms and values of society. Now, because of the media, all these elements were commodified, and then there's some type of favoring that, and it's just kind of concentrated in society. And now you don't see the clear ages of this subgroup. They are becoming part of the kind of diffused in this mainstream society. That is another way of that, losing their very clear identity in the subculture and getting diffused or assimilated, or however you call it, by the mainstream culture. So this youth subcultures transition to adulthood at some point, and that transition is also studied by many scholars. And usually the subcultures are younger people, and when they are transitioning to adulthood, that is the time sometimes formation of identities, questioning identities. That's the time for that kind of stuff. And that's the time when youth join all different kinds of subcultures. And youth participation in subcultures provide a space for experimentation with their identity, rebellion against authority, and the exploration of alternative ways of living, also alternative identities, I would say. So as they find their identity, as they are becoming adult, now you can think of what happens when people are transitioning to adulthood. They start families, they start having children, they start having jobs, they start moving on with their lives. So what happens to the subcultures? Participation may serve as a temporary phase or a stepping stone to a greater self-awareness and personal development. All different kinds of outcomes can come out from being in a subculture and then transitioning to adulthood, which we are going to explore in our next lecture. For now, what did we discuss today? So we discussed how subcultures emerge as reactions to societal structures, provide sense of identity and community, unification. It provides solidarity and internal support within the group, and community, cultural distinction, and often involve political and social resistance. And we also talked about cultural capital within these subcultures, subgroups. Participants join subcultures to express themselves, challenging status quo, whether it's political or social or cultural, and find belonging in an alternative community. That was the main elements of our lecture today. I hope you liked it. I will be talking about transition from subcultures to adulthood in my next lecture. All right, thank you.